Take a look at me with 1 Timothy chapter 4. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. We're going to read 5 verses. Verse 1, now the Spirit expressly says that in latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, commanding to abstain from foods which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. Look at this again. Verses 1 and 2 gives us warning. I don't know how your Bible reading goes. I just want to encourage you. Don't skip over the hard stuff. It's so vital. Here's the difference. There's meat in milk of the word. Are you with me on that analogy? There's meat of the word, there's the milk. Milk comforts, meat provokes change. Meat is called in Hebrew the word of righteousness. So it is the word that equips, enables, and provokes. It cuts to bring about change. And we all want to be comforted, but we've also got to be changed through the reading of the word, the embracing of what God has said. And sometimes it's meditating on receiving, dwelling, slowing down in the hard places. He who gains his life will lose it, but he who loses his life for my sake will gain it. Slow down in those passages because it needs to cut deep. It's got to cut deep. If it doesn't bring pain, it's not the word of righteousness that brings change. There's got to be that point where you go, oh, it's necessary. Let me illustrate it this way. There are people who have certain kinds of afflictions, difficulties in their body, and perhaps you go to a doctor and the doctor says, man, you have no feeling in your foot. He says, no. So he takes a sock and shoe off, and he takes a needle, and he'll just prick the bottom of the foot, and there's no pain. See, it's not a good sign to not feel pain. It's not positive. It's a sign of a problem, is when something should hurt and it doesn't. You don't ever want to read through this stuff and go, oh yeah, all is well. Not a good sign. Not a good sign. You want that thing to prick. You want to go, oh, that hurts so good. But it's that word that makes you know you're alive. So he talks about those who fall away from the faith. Interestingly, verse 3 says, forbidding to marry, commanding to abstain from foods which God created to receive with thanksgiving. Let me just stop there. This is kind of a weird deal. Paul's warning Timothy and the group that he leads. He's warning them. He said, listen, we know people's hearts are going to grow cold. They're going to become deceived by demons. All this junk's going to happen. And out of that group is going to come a list of rules, non-biblical rules. Now remember, the Bible does give us commands, and don't ignore them just because you live under grace. Grace doesn't give you a pass to skip the rules. Grace gives you the power to do the rules. So here's a list of rules that's created out of this deceptive movement. And what is it? They are rules that make you more pleasing to God. That's what they say. So in other words, you're going to obtain favor. If you do this, if you don't marry, you don't eat these certain foods, you do this, this, and this, you observe this particular day. In Romans, he expands the list. He says you follow this day instead of this day, you eat this instead of this, you drink this instead of this. These list of rules, if you do everything just right, then you'll have favor with God. What happened to Adam and Eve? The serpent crawled up to him and said, if you partake of this fruit, you'll be like God. They already were. The enemy tried to get them to obtain through works what they already had by grace.